Gosh, I wish I didn't know that. That was not being said.
No.
Sorry, kids. I will mind my pizza.
Hey, this is Jackson here. Phoebe just stepped out, but when she comes back, we'll kick the meeting off. So stay tuned.
You are unmuted.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Jackson Fox with Fast Planning. I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Project Enhancement Committee meeting. It is Thursday, January 5th and 11:02 a.m. For introduction of committee members that I see present in the room here, we have Sue Sprinkle, Phoebe Bradley, and David Hayden. And then online, I see that we have Tim Zinza and Dan Adamzak. I do not see present with us today Sarah Durand or Jeff Jacobson as of yet. But Jeff or Sarah, if you're online, can you let us know you're here? Okay, I'm not hearing anybody right now, but we do have quorum for today's committee meeting. For other attendees, for Fast Planning staff, we have myself, Jackson Fox, Olivia Lunsford, and Corey DiRtigliano. And then for other guests in the meeting here today, we have Randy Bailey, Don Galligan, Peter Stern, and Natalie Lyons. Is there anybody else in the meeting that I didn't announce? Okay, hearing none, that's who we have with us today. And that takes us to approval of the January 5th, 2023 meeting agenda. Do I have a motion on the agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Sue. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, David. Any changes to today's agenda? Hearing none, anyone opposed to approval of the agenda as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider it approved. That takes us to the October 20th, 2022 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Sue. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Phoebe. Right, any edits to the minutes?
I wanted to ask a question about something to say, seen in our minutes, but I don't see here.
Okay.
What and how do I want to bring that up? Do I do it in comments as an agenda?
I guess, why
Just a
don't you go ahead
question.
and explain and we'll work through it.
Okay, well, I see in our last minutes, we talked about Airport Way, the study we were going to do, and I don't see it listed in here. So I don't know how, are we doing updates and anything like that?
I can provide an update on the Airport Peg Road intersection study during my staff report. How's that sound?
Oh, I'm sorry, beg your pardon. I meant College Road safety. I'm number D in our minutes. I'm so sorry.
I can provide an update on both of those during our staff report.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, any edits to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, anybody opposed to approval of the meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider them approved. All right, that takes us to committee and working group reports. I do have a few items in the packet. First one of which on page 8 is the approved 2023 meeting calendar. You'll see the project enhancement committee in the far right column there. For 2023, this committee is planned to continue meeting quarterly. And you have dates in January, April, July, and October. So those are your regularly scheduled committee meetings. But of course, if there are topics or special projects that this committee will be working on, we can set up working group meetings for you all between those regularly scheduled full committee meetings. And then before I get into my next update here, to address Sue's question from the meeting minutes, 2 minor updates: the Airport Way and Pega Road intersection study, for which this committee provided a letter of support to the policy board for funding. That is moving forward in our transportation improvement program to initiate that study in 2023. So sometime between now and October, sometime between now and September, we will have a request for proposals out in the street for that study. At this time, on the funding side for that study, Fast Planning is contributing $300,000 for the effort. And in my communications with Sarah Shocker at DOT, DOT is planning to contribute an additional $400,000 so that study effort is funded at approximately $700,000 for a consultant team to work on that for us all. So that'll be a funding partnership between Fast Planning and DOT. Related to the other project, the College Road Safety and Access Improvements Planning Study, the policy board at their November meeting removed that from our funding plan for the transportation improvement program. The motion was made by Jerry Cleworth, supported by Mayor Cruz, to remove that study from the funding plan with the justification that not enough time has passed since the last time we looked at that corridor, which was 2014, the College Road Corridor study. They believe that there's still too much controversy to reinitiate that study within the next 4 to 5 years. So it's been removed from our short range funding plan, but kept in our long range transportation plan to consider initiating that 5+ years from now.
So they took it out of there because they didn't want hassle.
Yep, and it was a split
Not that there
vote.
was it's not that there was safety involved. Correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
And it was a split vote. But that motion did prevail and it has been removed at this time from our funding plan.
I seem to remember something about a crosswalk in front of the farmer's market. Is that something separate? Or is that part of this? Okay.
Yeah, underneath our fast improvement program for construction this summer, we are funding a crosswalk on College Road at the farmer's market. Really the last opportunity for the policy board to remove that project from our funding plan will be January 18th at their next policy board meeting.
Do you feel like that's something they'll do?
It was, Jerry Cleworth did discuss that project at the December meeting. I do believe he would like to see it removed from our funding plan. I don't know that he has the supporting votes at the policy board level though.
Is there
So
something?
we will see if he does or does not make a motion at the January 18th policy board meeting.
Is there anything we can do to help keep that on the?
Committee members are allowed to provide public comment during that action item at the January 18th policy board meeting, if you so choose. I will say, as far as public comment on our draft funding plan, the College Road crosswalk was the most commented project, or we received the most comments for that particular project. We received 117 comments on this funding plan. 38 were in relation to the College Road crosswalk, and 38 out of 38 were in support of the project. So there is a lot of public support behind it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that a policy board member couldn't prevail and still removing that from the funding plan.
Is this a mid-walk crossing? Or is it at an unsignalized?
It's at an
intersection?
unsignalized intersection, yes. So you have, I believe it's Caribou Way on the south side of College Road, and then on the north side is the main entrance to the farmer's market. So it's a driveway approach on the opposite side of the roadway.
All right, we can talk
Will
further.
it have a rapid flashing beacon?
Yes, rectangular rapid flashing beacon and a striped crosswalk. There's no plan at this time, however, for a pedestrian refuge in the middle of the roadway, a median, which is common with these types of applications, but College Road is too narrow to install a median with the crosswalk unless you eliminate at least one traffic line.
Which the study would have worked on.
Yes. And other crosswalk locations.
Sure. How unfortunate. Okay.
So my last update, Libby, if you go to page 9, just want to make you all aware that we are opening up a new call for project nominations, and this focuses on projects that lead to an improvement in air quality for our area. We have available to us through the new infrastructure bill approximately $3 million per year underneath 2 different funding sources. One is congestion mitigation and air quality funding, and the other one is the new carbon reduction program funding. So we have about $2 million of those congestion mitigation air quality dollars, and then $1 million annually for the carbon reduction program. So we are intending to advertise this call for project nominations beginning January 16th. The applications due February 17th. We will hold an applicant workshop for our local governments and the public in this conference room on January 17th to explain the funding opportunity and the eligible project types, as well as the boundary in which these funds can be used. And our technical committee will score all projects that are nominated to us for this program. And we anticipate having those projects selected and the final funding plan approved by April of this year. I do have some supporting information in the packet, which helps explain this funding opportunity a little bit more. Olivia, if you go to the next page. You'll see here in blue on the left-hand side there, we previously issued a call for project nominations back in July with nominations due in August for the bulk of the federal funding that we receive. And this includes our surface transportation program funds, our transportation alternative program funds, and our more flexible congestion and mitigation air quality dollars. This initial call for project nominations was for our traditional road and multimodal projects, as well as non-motorized projects. But as you can see there on the right, we have split off 2 other fund categories, which is funding that is supposed to be dedicated to transportation projects that improve air quality. So just over $3 million available per year over the next 5 years. And that is what this second call for project nomination is for. On the next page, this gives you a breakdown of the 2 different funding categories. At the top there in green, this shows you our congestion mitigation and air quality dollars. This funding has to be focused on reductions in PM 2.5 emissions, which is subject of our serious non-attainment area for PM 2.5 emissions. And those projects can be located anywhere within the Fairbanks PM 2.5 non-attainment area, which is a larger area than our boundary. And now separately, we also have some new carbon reduction program funds, close to $1 million per year. And these funds are focused on reductions in carbon dioxide emissions. And these projects must be within our metropolitan planning area boundary. To show you the differences between these 2 boundaries, in the next page, you'll see a map. In the yellow larger box there, that's the PM 2.5 non-attainment area. So $2 million can be spent with anywhere within that yellow box. But the carbon reduction program funds, which is just $1 million per year, has to be spent within our planning area boundary, which is in that teal color there in the middle. And then the next couple of pages, I have 1 page each for each of these funding categories, which gives you examples of eligible project types. Again, they must be transportation projects that result in air quality improvements. They are both, for both of these funding programs, the eligible project types are very very similar to each other. But they can, again, it has to result in a reduction in emissions from vehicles and it has to be a transportation related project. In the past, we've used these funds to put in motor vehicle plugins in public parking lots around town. We are paying for installation of the compressed natural gas fueling station for the Max Transit bus system. We've also purchased a variety of equipment for both the city and DOT, including sidewalk snow removal equipment. We also bought DOT a two-way tow plow so they can clear 2 lanes of traffic at one time during their plow operations in the highway system.
And you got that for who?
For DOT.
Oh.
And we bought sidewalk snow removal equipment for both the city and DOT. Another thing we've used this funding for in the past is what's called adaptive signal control on Airport Way, Pegger Road, and University Avenue to improve the radar detection so that those signals aren't necessarily timed all day, especially at nighttime. It's basically they're on-demand signals that if a vehicle approaches, there's no other cross traffic. It'll cycle to provide a green light to prevent vehicles from idling at intersections. Roundabouts are eligible. Certain non-motorized facilities, sidewalks and paths are eligible. So there's kind of a large gamut of different project types that are eligible, but again, the focus has to be a transportation project that somehow reduces emissions from vehicles. Right? It could even be an electric vehicle charging station. We can purchase electric vehicles for fleet replacement. Say if the city or DOT wanted to replace their gasoline powered personal vehicles, we could purchase electric vehicles for them. Same thing with heavy equipment. Even if there's a piece of heavy equipment that's run by diesel, we can replace that with a gas or compressed natural gas or electric vehicle engine. So just a few different ideas, but again, we are opening up the call for project nominations for this opportunity January 16th, and it'll run through February 17th. And I believe our local governments right now are all strategizing on what types of projects they would like to nominate to us. So if any of you all have some ideas that you'd like to share with us, and we can connect you all with project sponsors, because we are expecting local governments to apply for these to pay for the match and financing agreements for all the projects that we fund. Any questions on that? This new funding opportunity?
It's a lot.
What do those radars look like? At the stoplights? How are those different than the fire department using the?
The Opticom system?
Yeah. Do they
Well, the Opticom system is operated by a controller that's in their vehicles.
So what's on the Steese and 3rd Street, Main Street intersection?
I believe that is radar detection out there.
They're kind of
Some-
like a square panel that looks like it's.
No, these are they look like a little video camera that are sitting on the pole up top near the signal heads.
Those, are you talking about those things that look like a snow rake,
Yeah.
the big flat? Those are to help reduce the amount of like oscillation due to wind.
Oh, really?
It's called like a Texas something or other, yeah. It's there to try to reduce the bounce in those big mast arms.
That's smart.
Is there smart traffic lights that a city uses to predict traffic flow with cell phone use in cars?
I believe there is. Yeah, and all those technologies are eligible underneath this program. We can convert, if there's any leftover high pressure sodium lights, we can convert those to LEDs. So anyway, anything related to transportation within the road right away that would result in some type of emission reduction. So streetlights, signals, those are all eligible activities.
Okay.
Also promoting, the non-motorized use as opposed to vehicle use. Transit, anything related to transit would be eligible as well. So there's a federal database that shows you all of the projects across the country that have been funded with these type of federal funds that you can search through to see what other communities are using their funds for. And that database also has emission reduction calculations, so you can see, with implementation of, say, these new or advanced technologies or a change, converting a signalized intersection to a roundabout, they have calculated emission benefits for each of those projects. So you can get an idea of how well your project will actually score once it's submitted.
Where is that website? Is that this? No, that's Alaska. You said it's a federal website?
So, yep, Olivia is building a website where we will post the project scoring criteria nomination form and supporting information. And on that website, just yesterday, she added a button to that nationwide database.
Okay.
So applicants can take a look at that and generate some ideas.
Is that something you could send to us once it's done? Like, hey, it's
Yeah,
ready
we're
to look
gonna,
at?
our plan is to have the website live by tomorrow, because Olivia will be on vacation next week. And so at that time, once the website's live, I intend to email out the link to all of our committees.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So, and any member of the public can nominate projects as well. But again, to receive funding, you really need a project sponsor, meaning a local government that's willing to pay the 9% match and sign a maintenance agreement for the infrastructure or equipment that we purchase with these funds.
And is there going to be some sort of press release or something out to the public that discusses this?
Yep, we're gonna advertise this via social media, the newspaper, and online public notice system at the borough and the state, or normal advertising methods for these calls. And hopefully we'll get a Newsminer article out of it through Jack Barnwell.
Sure, yeah. And is this something I will hear Jerry bring to the city council? When he, and if he talks about policy or technical?
Yes, you will. And any project nominated to us from the city of Fairbanks should have an accompanying resolution.
Okay.
So the city council will look at those. I do believe Jeff Jacobson is starting to work on a equipment list for public works to apply for. That's the only idea that I know of at this time from the city. They'd like to purchase some more of those snow raiders. So something to think about. And you can certainly participate in.
This would be a good opportunity for you to just plug our newsletter as well, because I'm gonna send out some information about CMAC with the newsletter. So if none of y'all are signed up yet, you can just go to our webpage and sign up there for our new fast newsletter.
Okay, any other questions on this call for project nominations or College Road or Airport Pegger?
No. It's a lot of information, friend.
You should have seen technical
I was like,
yesterday.
wow,
This was just the tip of the iceberg.
God.
Okay, well, let's move on to our open public comment period. Is there any member of the public that wishes to provide testimony today on anything not listed on the agenda as an action item? There are no action items on today's agenda, so you can speak freely about any of those topics or any other topics of your choosing. I don't believe we have any members of the public today wishing to provide testimony, so we'll go ahead and close the public comment period and move on to old business item 7A, the Airport Way, Cushman Street intersection reconstruction. I included in your packet the previous concepts that were developed by this committee that were passed on to DOT, which I understand Kenny Engineering is working on the design. And we kept this on the agenda with the hopes at some point in the future that we will see some, I believe they're going to be 95% design drawings from Kenny to look at to compare and contrast with other concepts. So not to put you on the spot, Phoebe, but do you have any update on those drawings for the?
Yeah,
committee?
I guess just to clarify, anything that you receive would be coming from DOT.
Yes, Yep.
But under our contract, under Kenny's contract with DOT, we submitted the 95% design on December 22nd.
Okay.
So I can tell you that that is over in their contract section right now, and they've got some administrative things that they have to do before they forward that out for review internally and to other agencies. So,
Okay.
so anything beyond that?
And when that goes out, I know I'm on that list to get a copy of it, so, and it hasn't come across yet, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just wait to receive that, and once it's received, I'll pull out those plan pages and send them to the committee. And if committee members, I guess, see something that they would like to discuss, we could potentially set up a working group meeting to look at those in more detail.
Yeah, because if we're not gonna meet until
April,
April,
right, we would have to be between then and, or before our next meeting.
Just looking at this, I can tell you what was implemented was this recommendation too. This illuminated sign.
Okay, so page 17 has recommendation number 2. And did you say that the sign would be illuminated?
Yeah, similar to what's shown here on page 18, this backlit.
Okay. That's a good update.
mhm. Exciting, is what that is. Let's make it a change.
Okay, are there any questions from committee members?
Did we do anything further with the discussion of the southeast corner of that intersection? Because I know that there was, what are we gonna do with it? It's gonna be a park, it's gonna be a bunch of pavement, it's gonna be all these things, but did we really land on anything?
Not that I recall. I know we discussed that because that property was acquired by DOT. And the thought was is that
It's gonna be a big dead end or some nonsense.
It's a
turnaround.
cul-de-sac, yeah, it's a turnaround, a cul-de-sac. And adjacent to it, south of it is a kind of a green space. For drainage, like
A swale or
swale.
something.
ditch,
We'll see that in the drawings.
vegetation, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, there's some lands, it's like a landscape green space. But it functions for drainage and aesthetics. It's just not in the view of any of these images here.
And I think our concern was just pavement on pavement on pavement and more pavement. But that,
Yeah,
obviously,
Also taking money, or taking property out of the tax roll.
Yep.
I have one question. It might be more of a question for DOT, but just looking at how this intersection has a lot of these sweeping right turns and seeing other areas of town where the sweeping right turns are being removed. I guess I'm wondering like what dictates or what's the tipping point for adding these types of turns versus discouraging their existence? This is a question to the ether. I don't know if anyone in this room can even answer that question, but.
and to your point, is it like when you come off of Johansson onto Egger, instead of that sweeping right turn, it's now almost a real,
Hard 90, because it slows down traffic and it's a little safer for pedestrians, and they also did it at Illinois and College, I believe.
Yeah, my understanding, these pork chops are, again, they're a pedestrian refuge so that folks can focus on that, the turning traffic first, get to that island, and then just worry about crossing the main street.
and is it because there's more pedestrian traffic in this area that they put them there?
I think the big difference here is usually there's a merge lane that doesn't exist here. Like the other problems have merge lanes, so people would stop farther down on the merge lane, and that would cause the accidents, or it caused my accident. And they haven't fixed that one. which is the Pegger and Phillips Field, which I have no idea what to fix that, because that one still doesn't make, that one, I still know friends who get in accidents there.
Yeah.
For all the other ones, it seems like that solution has really been an improvement for accidents with my friends. So I don't think these would be a problem, because they don't have that merge lane. You'd still probably stop at that area before moving into the 2 lanes of traffic.
Although I must say, I've seen a lot of dangerous pedestrian. It's crazy that people haven't been killed on that for more reasons.
Well, I
than
watched
that.
somebody get hit.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and the person drove off. And faced it down.
Is that recently?
Oh, it was like a couple of years ago.
Oh,
It was when the lights go out.
Okay.
DOT wasn't fixing the lights and someone got hit on a left turn. It was crazy.
Oh, all right.
But you know, these pork chops, there's one at College and Old Stees. And that one seems to work fine, except when someone speed is going too fast.
Right.
They'll go flying through and hit those boulders on the other side. Which I've seen
The boulders on,
as a Girl Scout.
oh, God.
No. Disaster accidents.
Is it your friends again?
No. That is not my friend's pattern.
Okay.
I booted those ones off.
Okay, any other questions about airport in Cushman? Sounds like I'm waiting to see something come across my email underneath the normal channels. And then once I have that, I will, again, pull up those plan sheets and distribute it to the committee to take a look at. And then you all let me know if you'd like a working group meeting to dive into any comments that you have on the design.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's move on then. To item 7B, the new airport path connection signage. And I believe Corey's going to take control of the screen and show you all the latest concepts for that wayfinding signage at the airport to connect people to the area hotels and retail establishments.
Okay, so I'll start off by showing the pages in the packet that everyone's got, and then we'll transition over to some of the new material that we've been working on as part of a joint group between PEC and BPAC. The graphic that you can see up on the screen here, this yellow path indicates the new section of path that FAST provided, and then the red shows an improved section that connects along the frontage road there, Dale, that goes all the way over and terminates at River's Edge, where it kind of picks up with another multi-use path that was already in existence. So the scope of this project is to essentially create wayfinding signage that will help connect people from the terminal out to these locations at the various hotels in the area. There's a couple of deliverables that we're targeting. One is physical signage that will lead people from the terminal out, and then the other is a map component that people arriving at Fairbanks International can pick up and use to get to these destinations. So I'll show a couple other details. For anybody that's driven out to the airport, you've probably seen sections of this by now, but there's an improved path here on the south side of Wheat Lake Road. It moves up to the northeast, and then there's a rapid flashing beacon that they've installed here, along with some lighting that helps kind of connect this whole space as well. There's a couple additional graphics in here that show some of the sections and to highlight one of those poles that's being used. The signage that we're looking at for this space includes a mixture of freestanding pole-mounted signs as well as, freestanding signs as well as some signs that'll be mounted to these poles, or that's the intent as of right now. This gives you an idea of the type of information that we'll be providing on these. So Due to the nature of the funding source, we won't be able to explicitly say La Quinta or any of the hotel names, but we'll figure out a generic sort of alias. And then, yeah, lodging A, lodging B, et cetera. And then we'll fill in those gaps with the print map that will be housed within the airport itself. So there'll be something about lodging and then some distances to help orient people and have them decide if they want to hold their bags a mile or a mile and a half down the road.
Will those show units?
Units, yes, we're gonna do it in both miles and kilometers because there are a lot of international travelers that come, so we'll do both.
And then will those colors match the downtown signage?
Yep, so let me jump to this map. These are the types of signs that we're thinking about for freestanding, so just mounted on a pole. We'll work with the existing graphics and wayfinding that are in use in the city. And our hope is to eventually take this network and start blending it in towards the downtown as part of a bikeways wayfinding system. One idea for inside the terminal is to go with a kiosk, something like this, but probably more cost effective. But we'll continue to use the sun and aurora motif, match the same font sizes, things of that nature. The maps inside the terminal will also show kind of a micro of the immediate area surrounding the airport, and then macro showing the entire sort of Fairbanks metropolitan area, so people can see where they are with respect to the rest of the community.
Does that parking lot sign exist?
I
No.
can't confirm or deny.
Not yet.
Thank you for asking that, though.
At our last meeting, essentially what we did and what I'm currently working on is the specifics of the content that'll go onto these signs. So if I zoom in here, you can kind of see the nature of it. So the dual units as well as hotel, grocery, et cetera. And obviously the information is going to change as you get to various points. The signage will also be bi-directional. So whether you're coming from the hotels towards the airport or vice versa, they'll be two-sided. As part of that working group, we did establish a number of different locations for different types of signs. So kiosks, like I mentioned, within the terminal, these blue tags indicate where we'll continue to have signage. It's basically at any turning points to help reinforce direction. Some of the elements that will be listed will include lodging, restaurants, grocery, and I believe that's it. And the hope is to essentially track this all the way down to the intersection here at near Fred's West. So at this point, we'll have a slightly larger signage that will point people towards downtown, Pioneer Park, et cetera. And that would be useful to both visitors as well as just locals that use the bike path and potentially coming from the west side of Fairbanks. So does anyone have any questions on the kind of the scope of this or the way that these signs are being put together?
The pole color on that half moon.
This one here?
No, the other on the far left. That pole color is green, the other ones are.
Oh, that's just a generic background. Yeah, we'll go with something consistent.
Okay.
Is that going to be a metal sign then?
Yes, that's the vision, as it's an aluminum back sign
Okay.
to reduce costs. And we are intending to use undesignated local funds for this, not federal funds.
So
that
if
we
that's
can-
true, then you can put a name of something, couldn't you?
Not in the public road right away.
Oh, okay.
So
Very good.
even though we have a more flexible funding source, there's still state advertising laws with
Okay.
respect to
Very good.
the road right away.
Okay, that's fair.
Who maintains these? Or who will maintain these signs?
They're all going to be within DOT road right away. So the expectation is that DOT would maintain them. If one gets damaged or stolen, my guess is Fast Planning will buy another.
Hmm.
And hopefully DOT maintenance will simply put the sign back up.
Does that normally work well?
We haven't had that relationship in the past. The only wayfinding signs that we have are in city road right away at this time. And those have been damaged. And the city has been paying for their repair, not us.
So, when it says 1 minute, 3 minute, whatever, is that for vehicle travel?
I believe that's a holdover. Yeah, we likely won't include this sort of thing just because it's going to be a multimodal, non-motorized path. So there won't be any indication of time.
It's timeless.
If you're walking around on one leg with a
Yeah.
egg, you know, it's a
That's what I
totally
was
different
thinking.
travel time.
So in
15
fact,
minutes turns into 3 hours.
so in fact, as you are, does any of this make you think differently about being on foot or traveling these areas? Or
I think it should be standard practice that anybody in transportation should have to walk around on crutches for 6 weeks. Just so no one.
it is true, man.
It does change your perspective on everything from stairs to sidewalks to parking lots to roadways,
To snow removal.
snow removal, that will be one.
You got the handicap accessible parking sign in there.
Yeah, let me add an asterisk. Everyone should spend 6 weeks on crutches with no handicap parking tag. Make it really fair, saturating type experience. So that's where this at. The next steps are working on the specifics of these
Jeff wants
signs.
it.
Oh. Let Jeff. The next steps here will be to just refine the content that goes on each of the signs and do mock-ups for the locations. And those will be approved by BPAC. This group can also take a look and then we'll.
Do you guys design this in-house?
Yeah, we're intending to design this in-house.
Let me know if you need help.
So there's a kiosk on the east ramp. Is this being coordinated with, I don't know how much tourism comes in through the east ramp, but
So on the east ramp, as part of our, those air quality funds we talked about before, we are funding a separated path extension from the Mitchell all the way down to the east ramp charter flights.
mhm.
So that's in design right now. I believe construction's in 2024. Once that's built, we want to expand the signage out there.
Do
But we don't have a plan at this time to put any signage on the east ramp until that dedicated facility is actually in existence.
Have you seen a lot of foot traffic on that road? I can't say I
We hear
have.
from the airport that there is.
Really?
Because a lot of folks traveling into, out of the villages, a lot of them are staying up at Sophie Station or walking up to one of the grocery stores, buy stuff at Safeway, Fred Meyer, and then traveling back home with it. So there is a lot of taxis that run back and forth along that straight stretch, but there's equally, a good number of people that are trying to walk that because they can see, well, it's only about a mile walk. We could do that, but there's really no road shoulder for them to do that safely.
It was something that was brought up at BPAC was continuing that loop to try to paint a more complete picture. And at this far end here, there was some discussion about should Sophie Station be added to that map because a lot of people do also, go to that location. There was no real resolution of how far we chase this
Yeah.
around the other side, but I think it makes sense.
And there's a rental car place right there at University in Mitchell. So on the south end of University.
On Davis.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
It's between Davis and Mitchell.
that's right.
And that may be another thing. Should car rentals be a topic that gets included in this?
Well, that's the only one that's off-site within proximity to the airport. The rest of the rentals are on-site at the airport.
Well, that doesn't, yeah, that helps because if people are walking to, they might be
There
doing
are-
that.
I mean, there are these facilities. I don't know if they're still. in
Oh,
existence
I
after
forgot about
COVID.
that, yeah. There is
Yeah.
one there.
Good call.
So I'll make a note of it and see how that might fit into this overall
Yeah.
mapping scheme.
It's good.
Someone told me that's the cheapest gas in town. Is that true?
By the airport?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the creepiest
Yes,
too.
buddy.
Guest star in a horror movie, you go to that.
Yeah. It's just so desolate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like what's going on there?
Yeah,
Who really works there?
exactly.
Curious.
Any other questions on the signage before we go to the next item?
Right, not seeing any, so yeah, let's go ahead and move on to Turner Street, item 7C.
All right, so on page 23 in your packet, we'll just kind of go down through these, and I'll have Sue or Dave here in the room interrupt as they want to add elements here, but essentially, the goal was to look at Turner Street, and in its current state, we've got a statement that we drafted up as a working group. And I'll just go ahead and read that out and then elaborate on it a bit. So Turner's a neglected remnant road in Fairbanks downtown core, comprised of 4 segments running north to south and west of Cushman. It's a patchwork of uncoordinated use and ownership. With attention and investment, this underperforming and underutilized street could become a multi-use corridor and more broadly, a catalyst for urban renewal. So the goals of this particular investigation are to look at some of the current states of the property along that corridor and what some potential futures might be for it. The overall intent for how this moves forward would be that Sue will champion this at the administrative and legislative level, and it would be backed by fast planning efforts and also in the search for funding. And if any of that's inaccurate, you guys can chime in and let me know. Some of the challenges that we identified off the bat, and Olivia, can you watch the chat too? If anyone raises their hand, there we go. Some of the challenges identified with this corridor are that the public right-of-way lacks a sort of ownership. I mean, it has legal ownership by the city and also by Usability, but when we use the word ownership, in this case, we're talking about sort of physical occupation and presence. It has no active edges, and that in sort of urban planning, architecture, design speak means that there's no deliberate interaction between businesses and that adjacent space. Corridor is not cohesive, spaces aren't consistently used, and at current, there's no budget for improvement. There were a couple other elements that we discussed since this draft was put together, and that's that there are a number of sensitive utilities that we need to maintain access for. And there are active entrances to businesses and loading zones for businesses along this corridor that are also really important to maintain, like the ADA entrance into the old courthouse building that has the wheelchair ramp and the handicap lift inside. Any questions about challenges on that corridor, or maybe elements that we didn't quite capture for Turner Street?
Tim unmuted. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, this is Tim. I looked up, I went to the Fairbanks GIS and I pulled the property deed for that first, that Usability owns, and the Turner Street right away has been vacated and is now part of that block, just so. And there's also a fire lane easement. So maybe the fire marshal needs to be involved. I don't know how fire safety is done for that building, but there's an actual easement where the old Turner Street right away was. So that's something to look at.
Great, yeah, that's really helpful. We'll keep that in mind as well.
Jeff has his hand raised.
And one last thing, on the 4th to 5th block, it's not shown in, I'm on page 28, but there's actually, there's a lift station that would have to remain. It's like a little building. I mean, that can't get relocated. I mean, is that what the building is, that purple thing?
Yeah, this
Oh,
purple
okay.
block is, we've got it colored up, but yeah, that, is that Golden Heart Utilities?
Yeah, probably the city owned it at one time, but all the utilities are privatized now and Golden Heart owns it. And you really can't relocate a lift station and there would be nowhere to put it anyways. So that's just something to be considered. And other than that, you already mentioned there's a lot of underground utilities in there. And the other, well, maybe I'll stop or can this get attached to a project? Because we got a lot of downtown road projects going, and it almost seems like to get those mid-block crossings taken care of, it'd be ideal to take care of them while like Fifth is going to construction next summer, and we're already doing kind of a mid-block crossing down at the Borough Building. So if we're dumping peds out on Fifth across from Sadler's, I don't know if we can incorporate this into the upcoming projects. Like Fourth is on the tip. We could add mid-block crossings to that project. So but I don't know how the funding thing works, Jackson. I don't know. Can we get this to a funding phase or what?
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. At this point, we're just working through some concepts to kind of see
Okay.
what the city's reaction might be to repurposing some of the space for these public road rights of way.
Okay.
But after concepts are developed and there's some support by the city and city council, then we can work on the funding piece after that.
Yeah, and definitely let's not forget the fire marshal review. I had that happen to me once, and yeah, we wanted to do something that would violate like fire access and code. It's just some things that sometimes you don't think about that's actually needed. But yeah, other than that, that's all I got.
Thanks for the input.
I think Jeff had a stand up next.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, I like the visioning of, trying to do something with this dead space downtown. So I applaud that. I think we have a history where there's been some stops and goes and some conflicts with property owners and access to their buildings and use of that land. So how we proceed forward is, would be to make sure that those placeholders have an early role in that, we're thinking about doing something with this space. We'd like your concerns, ideas expressed so that we could incorporate them as we're working on developing a long-range plan for this. It's I see this as something not happening overnight because it has so many, each block has its own unique set of challenges. And so one size does not fit all, but it's certainly a project that could be, worked on in phases once we have an overall vision, kind of agreed upon by the adjoining landowners in the city. And then the big thing is, the funding. And it would be great if we were at that point where we had a defined project design and that everybody was in agreement with it for the most part, the major agreement, I should say, so that we could attach, part of it to the Fifth Avenue project, since, the last section of Turner Street ends right there at Fifth Avenue. We're going to be spending a lot of money on that street in the next couple of years. It would be great to build in features on Fifth Avenue and at Turner Street that complement each other. So Jackson, as far as the Fifth Avenue, where are we at as far as the construction or the start date of that?
Well, construction scheduled for this summer, 2023. That project has experienced a number of increases over the past year. And it does have a, relatively defined footprint already as the final design drawings are being developed. So I don't necessarily think there's a lot of opportunity for us to modify the direction of that project at this time to say include that sidewalk. But I think that and obviously, I think we have quite a bit more work to do here on developing these concepts. And as you stated, engaging the adjacent landowners to try to get some buy-in and try to get their feedback on some of these concepts. So I don't really think there's an opportunity to say expand the Fifth Avenue project to include
Right.
part of this at this time. But as Tim stated, perhaps we can include it as part of the Fourth Avenue project, which that design will start here in a couple of years.
That is a problem. That is a possibility, other than the fact that you have a whole block separating that Fourth Avenue project, because it just goes from Cowles to Barnett and not to Cushman. But so I was afraid that we would not be able to use that Fifth Avenue project as a tie-in. So on the Fifth Avenue project, the benches and the landscaping, that's going to be on the Sadler side of Fifth Avenue, not on the
Yes.
other side, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that design and development can go forward. And when we have a concept design for Turner Street, whatever modifications need to be made on that little small connector with Fifth Avenue, we can deal with it then and in the future then. But as stated earlier, we have to take into account that Turner Street does not have any traffic crossings and it's mid-block. So all designs that we have need to come up with some sort of safe way for a wandering pedestrian who thinks they're in a pedestrian zone realizes they're now on a street, whether it's a raised speed hump, flattened out. So it's not like a big hump, but it definitely is a visual and physical. You're in a different space now. Your behavior needs to be altered while you're in this, bridge pathway across traffic or something to that effect. But I like the idea that, we're gonna do something with it. It's just, working at all the kinks. And as Tim said, a lot of that property has restrictions as far as right-of-way, utilities, vacations of right-of-ways. I mean, yeah. Key Bank and Usability, they basically own that whole section of Turner Street now. So them buying into it and being a major participant would be great, because that would spruce up the front of their buildings, and they also could be a funding source for that block of Turner Street once we come up with the design, for the project.
Yep.
Yeah,
That
that's
sounds,
certainly the hope.
yeah.
Yeah, those are great points, Jeff. And I think that kind of as we talk about it, you'll see some of the things we're considering really nod to the points you're bringing up, like being sensitive to pedestrians moving north-south when there's still east-west traffic being maintained. And then also the thought that, there may be some way, like you said, to connect south of Fifth, and there might be opportunity for higher utilization of the Sadler's lot in order to support some of the things that are being considered for these connected plazas. So I'll jump into the vision, and then we'll go down through the different sections. And just so everyone's aware, this is all very much draft. There's still tons of time for input, and I expect it'll be evolving even after funding and being put together. So the whole idea is that it's a very plastic flexible type of process. So the vision here is, basically the antithesis of what it currently is. And the vision is that it's a welcoming, beautiful, and cohesive space. It supports the adjacent businesses and encourages engaging public occupancies in those vacant tenant spaces. I know that it's a bit of a dance because the property owners are there to stay, but their tenants aren't necessarily. So customizing the spaces for the tenants is, puts things at a certain amount of risk, like the Children's Museum, as we'll see in a minute. The changes here would encourage prolonged enjoyment of downtown. So it would provide activities, spaces to relax and also spend money. The quarter features are also impermanent, dynamic, and changeable. A lot of the motivation behind that is that, this hasn't been done before in Fairbanks, to my knowledge, and that any interventions that we want to do here can be changed if they're not working, or if they're resulting in some other issue that wasn't anticipated. As well as the fact that, like I said, there are active loading areas, there's utilities, there's sections of Turner that seem to get pulled up every 3 years in order to get to subsurface utilities. So everything that is being considered at current is movable. Ultimately, the space is fun, encourages play for all ages, and then it also begins a trend of placemaking in downtown. And placemaking in this context means something unique to Fairbanks. You know, imagine Instagrammable type moments, spaces that, you know, people take photos of and remember as being unique to Fairbanks, Alaska. So it would have a benefit for both tourism and locals. Sue or Dave, do you guys have anything to add?
No, you're doing great. Thank you.
Great.
I'm excited.
Does anyone else on the line, do you want to add anything to vision or things that you'd like to see that maybe we didn't capture in this brief bullet list?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I don't know where this process is at. This rehaul of the downtown master plan. Does anybody know where that's at?
It's almost going to public. It's not been publicized yet. It's still a work in progress.
I guess that's my comment, is how does this align with that effort? And maybe it doesn't.
I think this would fit fine because
Yeah,
there's nothing that would say they couldn't do this.
and it's not very prescriptive at all.
Yeah, that's right.
so.
Oh, it's not.
No,
Okay.
on purpose.
Okay.
Good question, because I would love to. I'll lay that next to it. See what we got.
All right, so kind of a quick aerial view here. These are the 4 segments we're talking about between first and second, second and third, third and fourth, and fourth and fifth. We'll look at those a little more closely, but you can also see an image here looking up through that corridor, and you know, visually it's a relatively short space. It doesn't take more than a couple minutes to walk from one end to the other, but it is just somewhat disjointed in use and in terms of what's there and who's currently using it.
Shabby, unattractive, unfriendly.
Sue's got the good adjectives. These are some of the concepts. We did work on a big sort of vision board here. I'll zoom out and just show you the overview, and then I'll zoom in on some of the highlights. But there was a fair amount of time that was spent looking at precedents in other communities. I think COVID and the trend of taking sort of lesser used roads and converting them into higher uses for more users is something that's happening nationwide. So there was a lot of good material out there to draw from as we were looking at this. A lot of the interventions that we looked at too were focused on low cost, low intensity startups. So similar to the Participants project that happened last year, a lot can be accomplished with paint and is relatively easy to undo if changes need to be made on a longer scale. So the big sort of driving forces in these concepts that you'll see in the next couple minutes are light, seasonality, color, placemaking, plazas, furniture, and pavilions, and plants. And the thought is that these are all things that are viable in Fairbanks, Alaska. Fairbanks has struggled with really highlighting its winter city. I think it occasionally does things really well, but then other times there are lull periods where not much is happening. So all of these elements combined, the thought is that this could cover an entire year's worth of activities. And a lot of these things are low cost, low intensity startup type conventions. There's a little bit of investigative work that was done just to start. And again, it's still at the early phases, but on these first 2 segments, 1 and 2, things that were highlighted were active loading zones, building entrances that need to be maintained, ADA building entrances, which are especially critical. There are sidewalk driveway cuts, there's active roadways, there's street parking and parking lots, all kind of overlaid in one level of intensity or another here. See if there are any other notes. No, that's it. One thing that was sort of highlighted that's a little unique with this is one of the few roadways that's used with any degree of regularity, and it's largely used as a cut through and turnaround type of road. So it's not necessarily connecting anything, but it is used as a shortcut for people to override the one-way nature of our downtown roads.
Guilty as charged.
Who hasn't, turned the wrong way on Third for a second? And then the landowners or the occupants on these are Key Bank, Chamber of Commerce, and Old Courthouse, as well as Aurora Energy. The next block is a series of Charlie Cole buildings between 4th and 5th, and then also the Children's Museum is the tenant of this building here between 3rd and 4th. It has similar challenges to the other ones in terms of entrances, active loading zones, street parking, etc. And utilities aren't annotated here, but like Tim mentioned, there is some fixed utilities in this space, transformers and a lift station, Golden Horn utility lift station. So it's not anticipated that any of these utilities would be modified just in order to keep costs low and increase the likelihood that things could be returned to their current state if that was ever a necessity. So the kind of pivoting to the vision for this is that, this was a roadway, it was a connected corridor at one point, and now it's just been segmented in such a way that it is really a dead end on two sides in terms of vehicles. But the hope here is to really pivot the target audience and use to multi-use and non-motorized. Each one of these remnant blocks is being sort of identified as a plaza, and the whole corridor is a series of linked plazas. The way that connections are more or less done, or the way they're envisioned in order to keep continuity, is that there would be maybe in the early stages, perhaps it's just accomplished in paint or light at these mid-block crossings. And then at a future date for ADA and other reasons, I think it makes the most sense for them to become tables so that you have a level transition between each of these spaces. Those tables are great for a number of reasons. It gives pedestrians better lines of sight. It makes pedestrians more visible to oncoming traffic. And it also helps with crossing and plowing and not having a number of different grade transitions to have to plow. Each one of these two is themed slightly differently. And these are, again, all draft ideas, but they're themed more or less loosely on what's happening adjacent to it. The first block is sort of seen as kind of a commerce or a market block, and I'll go into details in a moment. The second block pinned here between the Old Courthouse and Bobby's is seen as more of an entertainment or dining block. And there are a number of reasons I'll highlight. The third block, which is pinned between a retaining wall or a separating wall between the post office's parking lot and the Children's Museum, is seen as kind of play and experience. And then the final one down between the Charlie Cole buildings is highlighted as entertainment. Part of that is due to the widened nature of that site down there. Does anyone have any questions about the high level thoughts here in terms of how we're describing these, or feedback or input related to that? Okay.
This is Tim. I got a comment, I guess. So from second and third, you call that like the food block or something, or?
Yeah, I can give you additional examples on it, but it's basically there's a trend of things called food truck parks. So it's a way that you put in minimal infrastructure for dining, and then you essentially provide spaces where a rotating cast of food trucks can pull into. So it still maintains itself as a road right away that loading and unloading can be done in, but it is targeting food.
I wonder, I mean, being next to Bobby's, I don't think he'd like it. That's just my observation. How's that work? You got to get him to back up on it or something, or?
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
No, I was just curious, putting food trucks next to a restaurant just seems like, I don't know. If I was the restaurant owner, I don't know if I'd like it.
I think there's lots of examples of that in town where there's restaurants and food trucks that coexist.
And Bobby's isn't open at all hours. I mean, This could be for early breakfast or
Oh,
lunch.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, there may not be overlap there, and I've heard in the past that Bobby's has had festivals and things that they, they'll do. I'm not sure if it's a parking lot one or if it's something internal, but with this block being themed as sort of food and dining, there's no reason that Bobby's couldn't also participate in some way with that. I know my hometown where I grew up, there was a Greek festival every year, and it was a huge outdoor dining, kind of party atmosphere. So my hope is that this would sort of magnify food rather than create kind of a scarcity mindset that somehow someone's losing out on this deal.
Where are some of the examples? I'm trying to think of some. I can't think of any.
I think of the pita place on College. There are food trucks nearby to that restaurant, and he started out as a food truck. So there's that this and that burger. There's Quickies, Lane's Quickies Tacos.
Which also served as a food truck.
Yeah.
Fun on
So-
the Run.
Oh, on
and
College Road.
Burger
On the run,
Place.
we always, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so that's I think a super interesting food court, and I'm actually working on a food court at the end of Noble, next to Wilbur Brothers. It's a cleared lot right now. So, but there's no restaurants right there other than the co-op, which is across the street.
There's a food truck under that awning too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and then there's the pizza place.
Oh, they had good
That was
pizza.
gas station.
Yeah, that
There's
was.
a lot, I think there's pretty, I mean,
I think,
Room for more.
adjacency of restaurants is not a bad thing. I mean, just think of that food court on South Cushman, which I like to think of as the international district of Fairbanks. That has the sushi place, the Mediterranean
Chicken and Thai.
chicken. I mean, it's kind of nice to have a bunch of restaurants nearby, and there are so many restaurants downtown. I don't think there's not a paucity of restaurants options downtown.
We are lacking.
Yeah,
We
I don't
need,
think we are lacking downtown, but I don't think there's a tipping point. There could be more.
I have,
Downtown's report.
And okay, I think we just need to remember that this is a vision of connecting these disjointed sections of Turner Street. So I don't think we need to really worry or get mired in the details, because as we, refine this idea and start working with some of the adjacent landowners, it may change significantly. One concept it would be, if you want to avoid conflict with, Bobby's, is maybe working with Sadler's where their parking lot, they have the food trucks parked in their parking lot. And so you walk through the Turner corridor to the food trucks, and then you go back into the Turner corridor where there might be some tables where you could eat outside. I think it's just the idea that there is this public space that we can be creative with, so I don't think we need to start worrying about it. I think what we should look at is what are the existing restrictions on the land and what can we fit in there, and what shape and flow to where, where you've identified market, dining, play, and entertainment may have to jump around to different locations, or it may take on a whole different theme. I was recently in St. George and went to an outdoor theater. I want to say Teocon or something like that. And they have this incredible walkway that's probably half a mile that kind of gradually goes up the hill, but it's in like these terraces. And then they have this running water that goes down through it. But on each side, then they have places for craft booths and food booths and dining. So they're taking this pathway to get to this outdoor theater and making it into a social gathering place and commerce place. And, that's what I'm looking here is how can we turn this space so it's multi-use, it's attractive, it's safe. The adjacent property owners are benefiting from it. Its cost is for maintenance is borne by a variety of entities who are involved in this, you know, like I said before, usability in the bank may dictate what the theme in front of their buildings are and, you know, take on the responsibility for security or maintenance. We could do something like over at the Morris Thompson Cultural Center where they have that river walk. Or maybe we'll do a walk through Fairbanks history or Alaska. And so you go to different parts of it and experience different aspects of the interior. I just love the idea that, you know, you're being creative and saying, what can we do with each of these blocks? And that's where I'd encourage us to go is let's not get bogged down, but let's just keep, you know, looking at it and seeing what will play out.
Yeah, I love that idea of, you know, it being almost a blank slate for like a gallery walk or, you know, I think
First
the hope
Friday.
is that, yeah, first Friday, you could have art come to this space instead of people having to drive, you know, all over town to see lots of different artists. I think the benefit here is that it's sort of out of the way and it's not used much. So I don't think I'm hoping there's not a lot of struggle to get people to get on board with the idea.
And God knows there's a lot of parking nearby.
And there's
There
tons
is
of parking.
not.
Oh, please. I don't,
It's not.
you talk to this hand.
I'm gonna
Right
tell
here.
you right now, and you guys know this too, being in this building, that is a concern I would have, is that this could create conflict with,
On weekends especially.
not concerned about the weekend, but
Oh,
if this were an attraction during the weekday, this would create a problem for parking of the tenants of these this parking lot here, for example, it's not Bobby's, it's owned by Usability.
I do know that.
During the
Right.
daytime, people of this building park here.
Right.
And as you guys know, you're parking over there by Salty's right now. How
Mhm.
often do you not get your parking spot because of that competing interest? So it's just not, I like this idea very much, and I love adding some vibrancy and welcome to downtown. I do like this. I think the parking does need to be considered,
Mhm.
and that's a future thing, like to how you can overcome people who are coming here and they're not parking irresponsibly.
It'd be a great problem to have.
It is a problem. It's
Well-
it's a problem we have every day. I
Yeah.
mean, we have it every day,
We have a different of opinion on this one now.
but you're not a tenant of this building.
No, I live downtown though. I
I
work
know,
downtown.
I
now.
know, and I think it's an inherent problem of, being
And especially
downtown.
since this is, I think for families or visitors who probably don't have, well, visitors don't have cars. Most of them, tourists don't.
So I have a
Yeah.
Let's
suggestion.
table that.
I have
Just
a
a
sug-
comment.
I have a suggestion. In the section of Turner Street between Fourth and Fifth, where the Charlie Cole property is located, you can see in some of the photos that there are actually cars that are parked there using either the Charlie Cole building or what used to be the bingo hall. So when we do the Fifth Avenue project, on the Fifth Avenue end of the Charlie Cole building, is that going to be on-street parking there, or is that going to be part of the driving lane?
As the on-street parking is being maintained. So yes, the on-street parking will remain.
Because that would be perfect, because if we come up with a design where we're going to utilize this space, we could take all those cars, which some are delivery vehicles and some are employee ones, and create in that parking area along Fifth Avenue there, either some reserved spots for delivery vehicles or for tenant parking or you know, 2-hour time spots or whatever, so that those business activities that are using city property for parking, we're giving them an alternative rather than saying, I'm sorry, this is now a park, there's no cars allowed at all. So I mean, those are kind of things to kind of address, you know, some of the parking issues just in that one section there. That's where we had the problem before with the butterfly garden, is that the business interest did not like the encroachment on the parking aspect of their property. And it could have been, you know, addressed earlier rather than after the fact when the property owner was very angry.
Pollinator garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, could it be parking lot by day, entertainment alley by night?
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
you mean that people would park in there during the day?
I would hate that, to be honest.
It might just be a lot of resources, but something that was discussed was that if this does become a really easy to use pedestrian corridor, then it might actually encourage parking in Sadler's and make the Sadler's lot a more viable lot for people that maybe work at Key Bank or something like that, if the walking experience isn't so uncomfortable. Another thing is, a lot of these targets for daytime use are maybe people that are already parked downtown, like the dining patch there. They've already parked in the parking lot or wherever they are, and that's the space that they walk to. And then in the evening, it would really encourage a higher utilization rate of these parking lots that maybe just sit empty for, whatever, because no one's coming down to do anything else. But if you can convince them to come down and spend money and get food or whatever it may be, go to an event, then at least these parking lots are seeing cars regularly and people that are bringing revenue into town. I know that it is a sensitive thing, and when you remove parking in a tight urban grid, it's noticeable for people that rely on close spots. Myself as part of the temporary handicapped group, if you can't get too close, it does pose a big problem for some users. But we'll be sensitive to that, and I think it's not a part of the conversation that's going to go away. So I'll run through these different concepts, and kind of as Jeff touched on, and I think Sue and Dave were also imagining, these are all very interchangeable ideas. I think that we're putting them out there as this, sort of grab bag of concepts, and depending on who likes them, they can go one place or another. And maybe the idea of market is something that becomes the whole corridor one year, or who knows what's in store. But anyway, we'll get these ideas out there and get people thinking about them. So the first area is the market corridor, what we kind of themed market generically. It's really the arrival point for this space. It's like we mentioned, it's pinned between Key Bank and their parking lot and the Chamber of Commerce. And sort of what we're generically showing here is a gateway of some sort that announces you're entering a new space. That gateway wouldn't permit vehicles to travel through it unless it's in conflict with this fire marshal plan and emergency access. And again, all these things would be redesigned to accommodate life safety first and foremost. Other elements that show up in this piece and that would show up down the rest of the corridor are light poles. And these generically, we're showing these as the kind of light pole lightsabers that are showing up over on Cushman as part of the complete street. But here they're seen as a more multifunctional device that first and foremost, it is a vertical mast that would support things like solar shades, like seasonal winter lighting, like maybe sound and speaker systems. It would basically have power on it. It could support banners. It could also support lighting that projects color onto the ground, maybe in the winter months when any kind of surface treatment is covered by snow and ice. So really, these are sort of our Swiss Army sticks that can do a variety of different things depending on what the event or season calls for. Other things to note in this space would be, I'm sorry that I drew these as rectangles. These are not intended to be those concrete pea gravel planters, but the idea that maybe there is something that is sort of semi-permanent or at least heavy enough that someone can't force their way through them in a vehicle. That they could be moved in the event of, say, air conditioning replacement or some major event, but for the most part, they would help drive home the fact that this is a non-motorized space. So that's kind of the front here, and I'll pull up the model so that we can also, you guys can kind of look at these as from a pedestrian standpoint as well. So again, the front here is this kind of market space. We're showing a couple things here, none of which are sanctioned by anybody, but a better entry and a canopy maybe for the Key Bank building, as well as some complementary shapes where, perhaps it's a kind of a tilt up market space like you see at the end of Pike Place, where there's some small tables that people can bring their art or sell things on in an informal capacity.
Charging stations.
Could be bike storage on the back half, could have charging stations, could be a number of different things, depending. But again, everything is impermanent, it's skiddable and flexible. You can pull this stuff out of the way. It could be fabricated off site and then dropped off at this location. If it doesn't work, it could be removed or taken to another site altogether. The next block, the kind of food block idea here is, again, that this would be sort of like a food truck park. There are things here that would work with multiple different seasons. So in the summer months, you can have food trucks pull in, utilize these spaces for seating and eating, maybe umbrellas to help provide some shade and kind of protection from the elements, from rain. Another idea would be a either permanent or semi-permanent set of bathrooms that would also support this food use. There aren't any bathrooms, public bathrooms in this area, as far as I know. And this could be accomplished with a Connex, with a sort of self-contained unit, or it could be something that, if it's ever justified, could be plumbed into the actual utilities and become a sort of semi-permanent storage and restroom facility. It could also take, like in the winter months, when maybe the umbrellas are no longer valid, these can be tucked away into the storage unit, and then they become outdoor fire pits, either propane or some other fuel, to help allow people to use this in shoulder seasons when it is marginally warm enough to be outside and eat as long as you're around a fire, kind of like you see at Hoodoo and some other locations. So that's really the concept for this second block here. And there were a couple of images in the precedent studies that highlighted some of these. I apologize for the resolution here, but you can see here these, or actually, bear with me for a second. I've got a slightly higher resolution version. So you can see examples of these types of food truck parks all over the place if you do a search for that term. So they're really minimal. You know, when the food trucks aren't there, it's just a space with tables on it or some sort of furniture. You know, same goes for the slightly more structured ones. They've got these vertical masts. They're providing some shade, and then they have tables essentially. And then at an even broader scale, you know, sometimes there's more permanent infrastructure like these fire pits and around deck chairs, etc. So between these three ideas, that's sort of the concept for that second block. Things that could happen all along the corridor, which we haven't explicitly called out, are vegetation could be accomplished with, you know, large planters or something that's semi-removable. And then also using furniture that can be pulled into place or removed at any given time, these kind of freestanding elements. Or in the winter months, something that would blend light and the kind of craftsmanship that we see coming in for the World Ice Championship. There could be furniture that's both illuminated and carved. So think of it like a miniature sculpture garden that people can also kind of sit on and enjoy. Again, that idea of sort of Instagrammable moments that help keep this corridor active and vibrant throughout the year. The next block here is, again, it's bracketed by a sort of impermanent tenant that we hope will stay for a long time, and that's the Children's Museum. But the thought with this, because it's such a narrow space, is that it would be comprised of experience type amenities or things that you could play on and just sort of interact with. It's not great for lingering because of the narrowness of the space, but there may be some elements that you know, encourage passive play by either folks coming to the Children's Museum or people coming through the corridor. So things like, you know,